Hello, monsters, and welcome to the Horror Files. I am your host, Ed Live Dana, and on this podcast, I dive into a particular horror movie each episode, providing insights and reviews as well as the latest in horror movie news. And for this episode, we have a supernatural tale of terror from deep in the echoing marble halls of Morningside Cemetery, complete with speeding silver balls that turn your cranium into a plasma fountain, ladies in lavender that like to bone in cemeteries, and jabbars straight out of DUNE. That's right, monsters. I will be talking about the supernatural sci-fi horror film Phantasm from 1979.
Phantasm. Is it a nightmare? Phantasm. Is it an illusion? Phantasm. Is it an evil?
You have to take me home.
But why?
No questions. You must take me home.
Phantasm. Is it a fantasy? Phantasm. Is it alive?
There was nobody driving.
Whatever it is, if this one doesn't scare you, you're already dead. Phantasm.
So IMDb describes the plot for Phantasm as follows. Newly orphaned teenager Mike Pearson, his older brother Jody, and their friends face off against a mysterious grave robber known as the Tall Man, who employs a lethal arsenal of unearthly weapons in their Southern California town. The film was written and directed by Don Coscarelli and stars A. Michael Baldwin, Bill Thornberry, Reggie Bannister, and Angus Scrimm. So before we get into the film, just a couple little things. The spheres themselves were actually designed by craftsman Willard Green, who charged the production a little over $1,100 for his services. And sadly, he died just after production completed at the end of 1977, and he never saw his work on the big screen. And such a shame, because those little spheres are certainly horror icons now. Don Coscarelli's mother, novelist Kate Coscarelli, has held several titles on the production and even used two aliases, S. Tyler and Shirley May, for production design and makeup costume design, respectively. She also wrote a novel adaptation based on the film, and it was published in 2002. And I think only like 500 copies were ever produced. The flying ball scenes were actually simple special effects. The sphere was thrown from behind the camera by a baseball pitcher, and then the shot was printed in reverse. The ball attaching itself to the caretaker's head was filmed by sticking it on his head, pulling it off, and printing the shot in reverse. So, some little bit of Hollywood ingenuity there. So let's get into it. Please be advised, there will be spoilers. So while having sex in Morningside Cemetery, a young man named Tommy is stabbed by the woman who is revealed to be the local mortician, the tall man in supernatural disguise, as the lady in lavender. At the funeral, Tommy's friends Jody and Reggie believe he committed suicide. Jody's 13-year-old brother Mike secretly observes the funeral and sees the mortician, known as the tall man, placing Tommy's very heavy casket with seemingly little effort back into the hearse instead of completing the burial. So, of course, he's kind of disturbed by this. And Mike then goes to a fortune teller and tells her what he saw. And she has him stick his hand in a box I call the gum jabbar. And because I'm sorry, but like that's what I immediately thought of when I saw this film. And at first something seems to grab it, but then he's able to remove it unharmed after being told not to be afraid. And I'll talk a little bit more about this scene later. And so later, Jody, his brother, is seduced by the lady in lavender and taken to the cemetery to have sex, which she seems to enjoy doing. However, they are interrupted by Mike, who has been following Jody and has been driven out of his hiding place by a short hooded figure. Mike tries to tell Jody about the hooded figure, but Jody dismisses him. And at the mausoleum, Mike is chased by a flying silver sphere and accosted by a caretaker, but escapes when the sphere kills the caretaker instead.
Oh, shit.
So Mike then flees the tall man and slams the door to get away. The tall man's fingers get caught and then cut off, but continue to move, dripping this very thick, viscous yellow substance, which I've dubbed nacho cheese. Because it does look like that bright orange movie theater nacho cheese. So taking one of the fingers with him, Mike escapes the mausoleum. Now, the still moving finger is enough now to convince Jody about Mike's stories. And before Jody can bring the finger to the sheriff, it transforms into this flying weird insect. And Reggie, who witnesses the finger-turned insect attack on them, joins the brothers in their suspicions. Jody goes to the cemetery alone, but is chased away by little people they call them dwarves in the film. We have no idea what they are. I think they're the Sand People, or not the Sand People. God, I got that wrong before. What are those called? Not the Tusken Raiders. Oh my gosh, that's going to drive me crazy. The Star Wars people, the little Star Wars people. And a seemingly driverless hearse. So he is rescued by Mike in Jody's Plymouth Barracuda. Oh my God, that car is fantastic. Running the hearse off the road, they discover that it was driven by one of the hooded figures, a reanimated and shrunken Tommy, who they hide in Reggie's ice cream truck. Now, Reggie and Jody resolve to defeat the tall man while Mike is hidden at an antique store owned by Jody's friends Sally and Sue. And there, Mike discovers an old photograph of the tall man and insists on being taken home. And on the way, Mike, Sally, and Sue come across the ice cream truck overturned. They are attacked by a mob of hooded dwarves. Mike manages to escape, presuming the girls and Reggie are dead.
Let's get out of here, quick!
Michael, what is going on?
Just get me home.
What the hell's that?
Oh, shit. Get out of here. Don't open it!
So Jody goes to the mausoleum to kill the tall man, first locking Mike in his bedroom for safety. Mike escapes, but runs into the tall man who was waiting for him outside his front door. He kidnaps Mike in a hearse, but Mike escapes and causes the hearse to strike a pole and explode. Looking for Jody in the mausoleum, Mike is targeted by the silver sphere until Jody destroys it with a shotgun. That's an excellent shot, by the way. He's basically, you're trying to shoot like a speeding baseball. So Jody's an excellent shot. So Mike and Jody are reunited with Reggie, and together they enter this brightly lit room, which is filled with canisters containing more dwarves. And Mike catches a brief glimpse through a portal, seeing a red-hot world where the dwarves are toiling as slaves.
God, Reggie, look at this.
Don't fear.
God, I just grabbed him there.
Slaves. What? Slaves? They're using them for slaves. The dwarves. And they gotta crush them because of the gravity and the heat. And this is the door to their planet.
Yeah. Okay, stay together.
Wait a sec, I think I got a lighter.
Quick, light it up.
Now, a sudden power outage separates the trio. Left alone in the room, Reggie activates the portal, creating a powerful vacuum from which he narrowly escapes. In the ensuing storm, Reggie is stabbed by the lady in lavender, while Jody and Mike flee and the mausoleum vanishes. Jody devises a plan to trap the tall man in an abandoned mine shaft. The tall man attacks Mike at home and chases him outside, where he eventually falls into the mine shaft and is buried under an avalanche of rocks triggered by Jody. So then Mike wakes up in his bed, still worried about the tall man. Reggie, still alive, says that Jody died in a car wreck the week before. Everything Mike experienced thus far was a grief-induced nightmare. Promising to look after Mike, Reggie proposes a road trip. When Mike enters his bedroom to pack, the tall man appears and hands crash through the bedroom mirror, pulling Mike inside.
I know those rocks aren't going to hold them. Not for long.
Hey, you had a dream. Just a nightmare. What do you expect? You've hardly slept since the funeral last week.
I know those rocks aren't going to hold them. First he took Mom and Dad. Then he took Jody. Now he's after me.
Mike, that tall man of yours did not take Jody away. Jody died in a car wreck. Mike, you had a bad dream. Now, I know you're scared, but you're not alone. I'll take care of you. I know I can't ever take Jody's place, but I'm sure as hell gonna try.
Seems real.
You know, partner, what we need is a change of scenery. Why don't you and me hit the road for a couple of weeks?
Where'll they go?
Well, I don't know. I guess we can figure that one out when we get there.
Okay.
Well, get on upstairs, get your gear together. Because we leave when the sun comes up.
And so that is Phantasm, basically, in a nutshell. I'm going to go into this film. This is, there's so much to unpack with this film. And I know I'm not going to get to everything, but I'm going to do as much as I can. Okay. So most of the ideas for Phantasm were developed by Coscarelli from a nightmare he had as a teenager, in which he was chased down a long corridor by a flying chrome sphere, which he feared would drill his brain out. After seeing the audience reaction to jump scares in Kenny and Company, Coscarelli, who was the writer and director for the film, decided to do a horror film as his next project. And his previous films had not performed well, and he had heard that horror films were always successful. Branching into horror allowed him to combine his childhood love of the genre with better business prospects. And the original idea was inspired by Something Wicked This Way Comes from Ray Bradbury. Now, Coscarelli had initially sought to adapt the story into a film, but the license had already been sold. And the theme of a young boy's difficulty convincing adults of his fears was actually influenced by Invaders from Mars from 1953, and also Dario Argento's Suspiria and its lack of explanations was another influence on Coscarelli, and boy, he nailed the lack of explanations. The soundtrack was also influenced by Goblin and Mike Oldfield. That was something I definitely heard when I, watched the film the first time. The synthesizers used for the film were so primitive that it was often difficult to reproduce the same sound twice. And when writing the film's conclusion, Coscarelli intentionally wanted to shock audiences and, quote, send people out of the theater with a bang. He had said, I had a compunction to try and do something in the horror genre, and I had started thinking about how our culture handles death. It's different than other societies. We have the central figure of a mortician. He dresses in dark clothing. He lurks behind doors. They do procedures on the bodies we don't know about. The whole embalming thing, if you ever do any research on it, it's pretty freaky. It all culminates in this grand funerary service production. It's strange stuff. It just seemed like it would be a great area in which to make a film. And I totally agree. It's funny. It just, having this film be centered at a mortuary and having our main character be dealing with so much grief and death and loss and trauma really just makes perfect sense. And I'm like, why haven't more people kind of done this? I mean, they have, you look at the Autopsy of Jane Doe, and that handles morticians and stuff like that. But it's really fascinating. There were no accountants on the set, but Coscarelli estimates the budget at about $300,000. And funding for the film came in part from his own father, who was credited as the film's producer. Additional funding came from doctors and lawyers. His mother designed some aspects of the special effects, course costumes, and makeup. The cast and crew were composed mainly of friends and aspiring professionals. And due to their inexperience, they did not realize that firing blanks could be dangerous. Coscarelli's jacket actually caught fire from a shotgun blank. Casting was based on previous films that Coscarelli had directed, and he created roles for those actors. And because he could not afford to hire an editor or a cameraman, he did all those duties himself. Filming was done on weekends and sometimes lasted for 20 hours a day over the course of more than a year. Reggie Bannister described the production as, quote, flying by the seat of our pants. Actors would be called to perform their scenes and picked up as soon as they were available. Bannister did many of his own stunts. And though the film is actually set in Oregon, shooting took place primarily in the San Fernando Valley in Chatsworth, California. The script changed often during production, and Bannister says that he never saw a completed copy of it. Instead, they worked scene by scene and used improvisation. The script was characterized by Coscarelli as, quote, barely linear. While it contained, that's a great pull quote, while it contained the basic concepts of the completed film, the script was unfocused and rewritten during filming. The spheres came, again, from one of his nightmares, but the original idea did not involve drilling. Will Green, who was an elderly metal worker, actually fashioned those spheres, but, of course, never got to see the film. The black 1971 Plymouth Barracuda was used because Coscarelli had known someone in high school who drove one, and he realized he can get his hands on one by using it in the film. And that is a badass car, I have to say. An ice cream shop on Main Street was filmed on the outskirts of San Diego County in Julian, California, in the film. So, and I also want to go back real quick because I do want to talk about the soundtrack, which very much reminded me of kind of the score that Goblin did for Suspiria. The score was by Fred Myrow. And incidentally, Myrow also composed the soundtracks for Soylent Green, as well as Scarecrow, the Gene Hackman Al Pacino film, which is so funny. I don't think a lot of people know about that film. Yes, Gene Hackman and Al Pacino did a film together, which is kind of like, oh, okay. So post-production took another 6 to 8 months. The first test screening was poorly received due to the film's length. It was about 3 hours, I think. Coscarelli said that he erred in adding too much character development, which needed to be edited out. Phantasm's fractured dream logic was due in part to the extensive editing. It kind of makes sense when you see the film. During shooting, they did not have a clear idea of the ending, and several endings were filmed, and one of them was reused in Phantasm for Oblivion. And Coscarelli attributed the freedom to choose from among these endings to his independent financing. So to solicit outside opinions, Coscarelli paid an audience to watch an early cut of the film. And although he called it the quote disaster, he was encouraged by what they saw, their reactions to the film. The financial success of the film Halloween, released the year prior, convinced the vice president of marketing at AVCO Embassy Pictures, Robert Ream, to purchase Phantasm for distribution. And in March 28th, 1979, the film was released in California and Texas. It was released in Australia under the alternative title, The Never Dead, to avoid confusion with the similarly named 1976 Australian softcore porn film, Phantasm with an F. MGM released Phantasm on Laserdisc in 1981 and on VHS and DVD in August of 1998. Embassy Home Entertainment released it on VHS in 1984 and later reissued it under Nelson Entertainment after Embassy was sold to Coca-Cola in 1985 and renamed. Anchor Bay Entertainment re-released it on DVD on April 10th, 2007. In late 2015, Coscarelli showed a work-in-progress 4K resolution restoration of Phantasm called Phantasm Remastered at the Butt-Numb-a-thon Film Festival. It was supervised by Coscarelli at Bad Robot. Bad Robot became involved when director J.J. Abrams, who's a huge fan of the series, for those of you who know your Star Wars trivia, his character of Captain Phantasma was the look, the all silver look, the name, that was all a nod to Phantasm because he's a big fan of it. So he had requested a screening of the film, and Coscarelli told them that he did not have a high quality print. So Abrams volunteered the use of his technicians for a restoration, and that the completed restoration premiered at South by Southwest in March of 2016. Phantom Remastered was released in limited theaters on September 24th, 2016, and was released on Blu-ray on December 6, 2016. Charles Champlin of the Los Angeles Times deemed the film, quote, a smooth and terrifically impressive technical achievement, a sort of jeu de spook with all manner of eerie and shocking special effects. In a mostly negative review, critic Roger Ebert described the film as, quote, a labor of love, if not a terrifically skilled one, but admitted Phantasm had a good visual style and sense of pacing.
The movie has good moments. I can't quite recommend it as strongly as you can, but in any event, it's worth seeing, which is certainly not the case with our next film.
No.
Has absolutely no social significance whatsoever. It's a new horror film called Phantasm, and it's set in a highly unusual funeral home and a cemetery where nobody rests in peace. Has a few nice touches, like a severed finger that kind of creeps around with a mind of its own, and this weird little stainless steel ball that flies through the air, and it has two claws that come out and they dig into your forehead, and then a little screw comes out and drills into your brain, kind of like a lobotomy from a dentist. Anyway, the movie's about these two brothers who live near the funeral home, and the younger brother is sort of a nosy type who goes prowling around, gets into all sorts of trouble. Well, that was a good action scene, and there are lots of creepy moments in Phantasm that do work, but the movie's just really a bunch of special effects and horror cliches borrowed secondhand from The Late Show. They're strung together, they make no particular point. If the movie had a better story and even remotely convincing characters, along with those neat little touches like the stainless steel buzzsaw for the brain, well, it might have been a pretty good horror film, but as it is, Phantasm is a mess.
I agree with you, and possibly I like it even less. You're right. The buzzsaw, the finger, that's fun. That's the first half hour of the picture. From then on, forget it. There's nothing else. I don't know what this filmmaker had to say or do with this picture.
I'll tell you what it made me think of. It made me think of an exercise, like in film class. The exercise was go out, shoot as many basic horror cliches as you can think of. You know, like the hand from around the corner hits you on the shoulder and you look around like this, and it's not really a threat at all, or the creepy corridor, or people hiding behind tombstones and so forth, and they're strung together. One after the other with no purpose. What's the movie about? Why do we have to come in at the beginning? Why do we have to wait until the end? It's like a loop. You can come in at any point, have X number of experiences, and walk out again.
And it's all very chopped up. I mean, we get a thing with a time warp that is thrown in there. I don't know. We just wanted to show us a time warp. There's no explanation. It's never repeated.
Well, have you seen a time warp lately?
No.
Well, now you have.
Okay.
Neither one of us can recommend Phantasm, also R-rated, the horror thriller set in a cemetery. Bury this one with 2 no's for Phantasm.
Trevor Johnson of Time Out called the film a surprisingly shambolic affair whose moments of genuine invention stand out amid the prevailing incompetence. Dave Keir of the Chicago Reader described it as, quote, spotty and effective here and there, though he praised Coscarelli's raw ability. Vincent Canby of the New York Times compared it to a ghost story told by a bright, imaginative 8-year-old. He concluded that it is, quote, thoroughly silly and endearing. Variety gave it a positive review that highlighted the use of both horror and humor. Tim Pullian of Monthly Film Bulletin described the film as, quote, a dilapidated Z movie with singularly unconvincing apparitions and contraptions, and that the film did not have, quote, anything resembling a coherent plot in the course of all of the fumbling juvenile malarkey. Wow. Kim Newton at Empire called it, quote, an incoherent but effective horror picture that deliberately makes no sense and rates it 4 out of 5 stars. Scott Weinberg of FearNet stated the acting is, quote, indie-style raw, and special effects are sometimes poor, but the originality and boldness make up for it. Steve Barton of Dread Central gave the film a score of 5 out of 5 stars, calling it a masterpiece and, quote, one hell of a scary film. Bloody Disgusting's John Squires rated it 4 out of 5 stars, calling it, quote, truly original, and writing that it, quote, imbues its viewers a profound sense of dread. Author John Kenneth Muir called the film striking, distinctive, and original. Muir stated that the film has become a classic and that the tall man is a horror film icon. Phantasm has become a cult film, with Coscarelli attributing its cult following to nostalgia and its lack of clarification, as repeated viewings can leave fans with different interpretations. In 2007, USA Today praised the film for the, quote, touching portrayal of 2 brothers in danger, an iconic villain in the tall man, and a floating metallic sphere that's a death-dealing weapon. The film was rated number 25 on the cable channel Bravo's list of the 100 scariest movie moments. Time Out London placed it at number 75 in their list of the 100 best horror films. Drive-in movie critic Joe Bob Briggs included it at number 20 in his 25 scariest DVDs ever list. Hugo placed the film at number 7 out of 11 in its top terrifying supernatural moments. In 2014, USA Today quoted Giovanna Vjonkovic, editor-in-chief of Rue Morgue, as stating that Supernatural, A Nightmare on Elm Street, and One Dark Night were all influenced by Phantasm. Folklore, horror stories, and the Slender Man all identify the Tall Man as an influence on the internet-based character of the Slender Man. The film gets a Metacritic score of 72, a Rotten Tomatoes score of 73%, and a Letterboxd rating of 3.4 out of 5. My own personal rating, I really enjoy this film. I probably would give it, I'm going to say probably an 8 out of 10. And a couple things. I'm going to go back to John Kenneth Muir because he interprets the film as being about mourning and death. Many of the film's fans are, well, at that time, were young boys. And according to Angus Scrimm, the film, quotes, gives expressions to all of their insecurities in films. And he himself states that the theme of loss and how by fantasizing about death, the young protagonist deals with the death of his family drives the story. And Coscarelli himself identifies it as a, quote, predominantly male story that young teens respond to. Scrimm also explained the popularity of the film as fans responding to themes of death and the tall man himself representing death. And Muir describes the tall man as sort of embodying childhood fears of adults and states that the tall man wins in the end because dreams are the only place where death can be defeated. He is quite like almost a, again, that Freddy Krueger almost kind of character where it's sort of like real life and waking life and, nightmares sort of become entangled and it becomes harder and harder to differentiate between them. And dreams and surrealism are also really important elements in Phantasm. Mark Saloff of the Austin Chronicle compares Phantasm to the works of Alejandro Jodorowsky and Louis Brunel in terms of the strangeness. Savlov describes the film as sort of this existentialist horror and this bizarre mix of outlandish horror, cheapo gore, and psychological mind games that purposefully blur the line between waking and dreaming. Excuse me. Gina McIntyre of the Los Angeles Times also describes the film as surreal and creepy and idiosyncratic. And Muir himself writes that Phantasm, quote, purposefully inhabits the half-understood sphere of dreams and takes place in the imagination of a disturbed boy. And what I like and admire about this film is that the pacing is really good. I realized that it was like originally 3 hours, but what I really like is it doesn't waste any time. You get to the creepy stuff right away. Like, boom, once the movie starts, we're in it. We're in the story. We're setting the story up. And, we have Tommy's death, like, right off the bat. And then we start to, even just like right after that opening kill, there's the sounds in the funeral home and those dark figures darting between the headstones. And right away, it just doesn't waste any time sort of setting you into this film and what it's going to be. And I really, really like that. It's just so beautifully shot as well. I mean, $300,000 budget, I mean, it doesn't look like an expensive film, but it looks great. It really, really looks great. I've seen movies made for more than $300,000 that look like shit. I mean, they're also written terribly and acted terribly and all of that. And this one just looks fantastic. Like every single time I watch it, I'm just like, damn, that's a beautiful shot. Like I think about that shot of when Mike is in the antique shop and he finds that picture of the tall man on that carriage, and how it focuses in on him and you can still see Mike's fingers holding the picture as you see the image of the tall man in the picture slowly turning his head to look at us. It's so good. It's just really, really great. And I think what they don't try to do too much. It sounds weird to say this. It's minimalist maximalist. It's like it makes use of both of these kinds of things. And it's really kind of wild. And I think that's why I think Phantasm is just like such an interesting original film, is because, you make use of these stark backgrounds with these kind of, futuristic sci-fi kind of feel. And in some shots, it feels almost like David Lynch-esque with like its gothic starkness. But then, you have like such craziness happening, you have like blood spurting out of things and like, people being stabbed and tits everywhere. And it's just like, I kind of love like, the fun that it's having, because it is having fun, even though it's addressing, issues of grief and abandonment and fear. And we really see this, again, I said I was going to go back to this, when Mike goes to the fortune teller and she orders Mike to put his hand in the box and says, and then the girl says it, but she's kind of like her proxy. And the girl says, "Don't fear. Fear is the killer." And this, I think, above everything else, is the heart of this film, and is the heart of Mike and his journey in this film. Because even though Mike is a scared kid, a fearful kid, he's afraid that, his brother's leaving. He finds out that that's what he's planning to do. And so he's like following him around and stuff and worried that he's going to leave because they lost their parents already. Like, what was it? 2 years ago? But even though Mike is scared, he still wants to know what's going on. And he still is rather fearless about going back to that, the mortuary and investigating. And I just think I'm going to say too, I love the character of Reggie too, because he is awesome. And there's that beautiful moment at the end, this beautiful, very sad moment. And where it's like, we finally the penny kind of drops for Mike and for us, that Jody died a week before. And that all of this stuff, is supposedly, all just kind of in Mike's head. And that Reggie's like, it's beautiful to see, because you can see how emotional Mike is. You can see how emotional Reggie is. And they're trying to navigate their grief with all of this, with all of these huge momentous changes that life has thrown at them now. And to top it all off, Mike is dealing with the loss of basically his entire family, and now also has to deal with these nightmares that are real. I mean, or that, the tall man kind of, it comes back at the end. And it's just, it's such a fascinating story. And I do know a lot of men who love this film because really, there's not a lot of ladies in this film, but fine, whatever. And I get that. But I really like it as well because I think it tackles stuff like, grieving in a great way. And people who know me know I've, gone to panels on this at Crypticon. Heads up, it's coming up. I will be there starting May 2nd through the 4th. So if you're going to be in Seattle for Crypticon, come and see me. Sorry for the shameless plug, but that just jogged my memory. But anyway, people who know me know that I am absolutely fascinated by horror films that tackle grief and trauma. And, maybe it's because of my own issues. I don't know, but they just are so fascinating to me. And I love it when a horror film in particular just really kind of gets at something. It gets at something very honest and true. And I feel like that's what Phantasm does. Now, on the flip side of that, there's so many unanswered things in this movie. So many. Why the dwarves? Why the portal? Why is the tall man even there? Why is he disguising himself or shape-shifting into this lady and having sex with these men first, and then killing them? I don't know if I was actually talking to Rich Harris, who was just on the 100th episode. I was just talking to him about Phantasm because I had watched it. I had watched it the other day, and I was talking to him about this because this sort of made him pause as well. Sort of like, well, yeah, why is it that he has to fully have sex to completion with these guys and then kill them? And it's just kind of hilarious. It's like, you got him there, just kill him. You don't actually have to have sex with them. And it's just kind of hilarious to think about. It's like, well, no, it's it's part of the process. It's part of how I do, but it is kind of wild. But I think it goes back to a point where it's so hilarious because most films, at least with me, if they leave so many holes, I'm talking like Swiss cheese holes, the way that this film does, it would have me absolutely climbing the walls, angry. But Phantasm manages to get away with it because I think it gives you enough. I shouldn't say that. It doesn't really give you that much, but it gives you enough with the context of the film, what's going on. It gives you enough with the dialogue, the performances, the setting, the pacing, the editing. It gives you enough to hang on to it. You can hang your hat on this film. It's like I said, it's like there's interpretations that people can see, and it can be different every time that you watch this film. And I think the surreal nature of the film actually also helps that. I'm sorry, I'm going to go back to David Lynch again, but it's also sort of like that. There's the dreamy, surreal quality of his films where you go into it and you're like, okay, I know I'm not going to get a lot of answers here, But that's also kind of the point. You know, this whole thing is very surreal in what it's doing and supernatural in what it's doing. So I think having that right up front is good, because it makes you feel a little bit more like, I have no idea what any of this stuff is. I don't know what that dwarf red planet was and what they were doing and why the giant tuning fork is there, and, you know, and why the dwarves are set up in these little garbage barrels. And, you know, you can't explain this film, but that's okay. It's still really fun to watch, and you do get something out of it. And I think it's a credit to Coscarelli. I think it's really a credit to the performances, the way that it was shot. He had a vision of what he wanted to do. He didn't try and shoot and do too much with it. It's out there, but he's not filling it with a bunch of superfluous junk. It's really, really, even though it's 3 hours and there's some things that are lost, like Gladys is one, like you just, like near the end of the film, they go back to their house and Reggie gets scared by Gladys and he's like, oh, Gladys. And I'm just like, who the fuck is Gladys? She only shows up like that one moment of this whole film, and you just like never know who she is. But you can guess, you can fill the holes yourself. Well, she's like, you know, probably like their nanny or a house cleaner or, you know, whoever. It's like you can fill it up with whoever you think it is. But in any case, what I also love, and it's got comedy too, like there's these darkly comedic elements that work really well in this. Mike running past Jody and the lady in lavender having sex on a grave in this like wide shot. It's really hilarious. And then the severed finger in the box, excuse me, still moving in the nacho cheese sauce. I don't know why. It's this sort of dark humor. And even like Mike, you know, kind of seeing like the tall man and being like, oh shit, you know, there are these little fun little comedic beats that are just perfect. They work really well. They're just enough to break it up and give that sort of like, you know, make it fun. And Phantasm, boy, it's just so much fun and such a weird movie, but yeah, just a blast to watch. So I really love it a lot. The movie is available to watch on Peacock, Amazon Prime, Tubi, Pluto TV, the Roku channel, Plex, Fubo TV, Google Play, Apple TV, and Fandango at Home. And that was Phantasm. And now let's head over to the Horror Files News Corner. Killer Clowns from Outer Space had a proposed television series, an announced 3D sequel, and even a planned sci-fi original movie coming and going over the years. Now, none of these projects ever ended up seeing the light of day, of course, with the original 80s movie only spawning a video game follow-up at this time, but it sounds like the Killer Clowns may be gearing up for their long-awaited return to the screen, with reporter Jess Snyder breaking a scoop this past week on the In Snyder. According to his report, which you can read in full behind his paywall, Ryan Gosling is on board to produce a new Killer Clowns from Outer Space project for Amazon MGM Studios. Snyder describes the project as, quote, a remake of the 1988 horror comedy that was created, written, and directed by the Cheeto brothers, which of course centered on killer clowns who came down from outer space in a big spaceship to terrorize a small town with their popcorn guns, cotton candy cocoons, acid pies, and various other unique implements of destruction. Amazon has controlled the rights to the Killer Clowns property ever since the company acquired movie studio MGM back in 2022, rebranding the studio to Amazon MGM Studios. The Chiodo brothers have been trying to get a franchise continuation off the ground since way back in the late 1980s when the original movie came out, with the property's popularity growing in more recent years thanks to an endless stream of merchandise and prime product placement on Spirit Halloween shelves each and every season. It would seem the Killer Clowns are closer than ever to returning to our lives, and perhaps Ryan Gosling is the guy to make it happen. Stephen Chiodo explained back in 2021, quote, "We have been trying to get a sequel going since 1988, and Hollywood is just a horrible machine. The film really didn't get much box office, and when you want to get a sequel done, they look at the box office. They don't regard cult films as something to invest in." He said, quote, "We have this whole long trilogy, something we call a trilogy in 4 parts because we include the original ATV series for cable or streaming. It follows the adventures of all the characters as they go through their lives, crushed after the first invasion. It would make a great miniseries, so we are constantly selling that for people who are interested." So we'll see where that happens. I mean, Ryan Gosling is, I guess, the person you would want to go to get something done in Hollywood. So the Crazies and Kick-Ass are celebrating their 15th anniversaries with a Steelbook 4K Ultra HD and Blu-ray digital editions. They're due out on May 13th, exclusively from Lionsgate Limited, priced at $34.99. The Crazies features new artwork by Attila Sarsga. Sorry, Snarsga. I was trying to say Stellar Skateboard or Stellan Skarsgård. The Stellar Skateboard thing is that Stellan Skarsgård has had his Wikipedia page changed apparently like regularly to Stellar Skateboard. It's kind of wild. It's presented in 4K with Dolby Vision HDR and Dolby Atmos sound. The remake of George Romero's 1973 sci-fi horror film is directed by Breck Eisner and written by Scott Kozar and Ray Wright. Timothy Oliphant, Rhoda Mitchell, Joe Anderson, and Danielle Panabaker star. The Lionsgate Limited extras include 2025 audio commentary with director Breck Eisner, establishing shot with Breck Eisner, sculpting the horror of the Crazies, alternate ending, storyboard to screen, car wash. The legacy special features include 2010 audio commentary with director Breck Eisner, behind the scenes with Breck Eisner, paranormal pandemics, the George A. Romero template, makeup mastermind Rob Hall in action, episodes 1 and 2 of the Crazies motion comic, visual effects in motion, behind the scenes photo gallery, teaser trailer, theatrical trailers, the Crazies motion comic trailer. In the film, a small Midwestern town, residents turn violent when a mysterious toxin in the water supply turns everyone exposed to it into mindless killers. Priced at $32.99, Kick-Ass features new artwork by Tracy Ching. It is presented in 4K with Dolby Vision HDR and Dolby Atmos sound. The adaptation, Mark Miller and John Romita Jr. superhero comic, is directed by Matthew Vaughn. From a script he wrote with frequent collaborator Jane Goldman, Aaron Taylor Johnson, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, Chloe Grace Moretz, Mark Strong, and Nicolas Cage star. The Lionsgate limited edition extras include Pure Cinematic Fun featurette, Still Kicking Ass featurette, The Work of Art featurette, Physical Media Kicks Ass, and the teaser trailer. Legacy special features include audio commentary with writer-director Matthew Vaughn, A New Kind of Superhero, The Making of Kick-Ass, It's On, The Comic Book Origin of Kick-Ass official trailer, and Hit Girl official Red Band trailer. In the film, a comic book obsessed teen reinvents himself as a crime fighting hero with one glaring problem: he has no training or actual superpowers. And that is it for this week, you guys. Thank you so much for listening. As always, you can find me on Letterboxd, Twitter, and Threads at Dead Alive Dana. And if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes or movies for me to talk about, you can email me at deadalivedana@gmail.com. And until next time, monsters, stay safe, and most importantly, stay spooky.